Welcome to the GIBS Flash Forum, the first one of August 2020. And it gives me great pleasure to engage with a very successful CEO. It depends on when you're asking and who you're asking and what matrix you're using, either the number 4 or number 5 bank in South Africa. Welcome, Gerrie, Fourie. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Morris. Lovely to be on the show.
Thank you. So just to remind everyone, we love comments and questions and suggestions on the chat. So please feel free to send us any comments and suggestions. Ask any question that Gerrie is willing to answer, and I'm sure he'll be very happy to do his best. Gerrie, you know, I remember a while ago, I was speaking to Laura Dippenaar of First Rand, and you were saying to me, Morris, this is insane because in less than, I think, 17 or 18 years, Capitec had overhauled Nedbank. Looking back in terms of market capitalization, looking back, what do you attribute to the success story of Capitec in such a short period of time?
Yeah, Morris, it's actually an interesting story. You know, people ask me a lot, how did we do it? And I think what was important in the beginning, we had a very clear dream or vision. And then from there, we put down our fundamentals, how we're going to operate, and then formulate all our different strategies, and then write a business plan. Now, a lot of people, when you start a business, people don't do a business plan. But for the first 6, 7, 8 months, that's what we did. And it's quite interesting, that same business plan we're still executing today. There's not a big difference. And I joke sometimes and say, I think the only error we made was that we said we will be happy if we sign up 2 million clients. And now we are on 14.5 million clients. So yeah, it has been an incredible journey. But I think coming back to your question is the word focus comes out, the ability to really focus on what you're doing, because it's so easy to try and do everything for your clients or to try and do a lot of things, but to really say what is those big needs and only focusing on those needs. And I think those fundamentals is very important. You know, we said from the beginning, affordability, accessibility, simplicity, and personal service is the backbone of Capitec. And whenever we make a decision, we go back to those fundamentals. And for today, we focus on those fundamentals and try and make certain that we get to those fundamentals. So I think it's important to have that, to understand that. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think that's, I think it's also focus gives you that ability. You know, a lot of people talk about strategy. It's quite easy to talk about strategy, but to execute on strategy is critical. And you can only execute on strategy if you people really understand why they're doing it and are crystal clear on strategy. So we spend a lot of time on making certain that people understand the strategy and that we execute on the strategy. Because otherwise, it's just dreams.
So you talk about the original strategy or the original business plan that 20 odd years later, you're still executing on that. So I stand corrected, but you were there right at the beginning in 2000 when you guys were writing this business plan and started executing on it. And obviously under Rian, there was a particular mode. And now when you took over, I think it was in 2014, I'm wondering whether have you picked up where Rian left off, or did you have to step change and gear change?
Yeah, I think, you know, luckily I was there from basically the day one. You can argue what is day one, but we all started in 2000 and it was a tremendous journey. We were 8 that started together, some from different backgrounds, some came from Boland. But it was unbelievable. For the first 13 years, we worked together and we all had that same ambition as to build a company and to grow a company and to be successful. Yeah, I think any leader has got different styles, different things that they focus on. But I think the nice thing was we had a very solid foundation, and I could just take on and grow from the foundation. I think it helped me quite a lot to being involved in ops or running ops, so I understood the company quite well. I always say I think I take my hat off for a new CEO that walks into a new company and he doesn't understand that industry to lead them. I think it's a challenge. In my case, it was easier because I grew up with a company. I was there when we put in the first PC at head office. So, so you had a very good fundamentals, and I was privileged just to grow from there.
So if we were to spend a little bit of time on the leadership approach of Capitec, in a few words, if you had like 6 words to describe or 3 words to describe the leadership of Capitec, what would those be?
I think it's very honest, very ethical, very straightforward and robust, and very driven with passion. You know, from day one, that was that passion to be successful. My passion in life was always to build a company or build something. And I was privileged to be part of Capitec to be able to build. And it's my passion now with Mercantile to do the same. But I think that honesty, you know, to really have an exco meeting or meetings and you have robust, honest debates, hard debates, and when you walk out, you one team and you focus on delivering and you forget what was said in that particular meeting. You know, it's that ability, I think, that helped us a lot. That helped us also to focus and to make certain that we deliver on our needs.
So I noticed there's one word you didn't talk about or you didn't mention, and that is rules. And I wonder what your view is on rules.
Yeah, we had just maybe for the people, we had a discussion on what's happening now in South Africa with all the rules and regulations. And yeah, I believe you need to have rules and regulations, but if you try and manage to manage people by rules and regulation, you lose respect. And I think that's where the government is currently. I think it's much more important to manage with culture, values, and people understanding what is expected of them. But to go and make rules that people don't understand, people don't respect, you lose trust. It's critical that your people are with you. Any company needs to have rules, but I think the most important is integrity, honesty, straightforwardness, those values and culture. You know, if I look at our culture, it's defined as client-centric, our people and delivery. People understand that culture. So yeah, I'm a much more believer in focusing on those things than to make rules and regulations that people don't understand.
So Gerrie, talking about your culture, as I said, I find it interesting that in your investor relations space, I did a quick search to see if other banks do the same, and I haven't found any of the other banks doing the same. You reveal a lot in terms of accountability, in terms of your regulatory findings, or not findings, sorry, your regulatory reports on your liquidity position, your cash position, and so forth through the SARB. And you do this on an ongoing basis. It's not a once-off. You even have an archive of these things, which is quite useful for me as a researcher. I can actually go into detail very quickly and get a clear sense of what Capitec is about. What informed you or what motivated you to go to those extraordinary lengths of disclosure? And because this might help us to understand your idea around your values around leadership and integrity and very honest and so forth.
Yeah, we've got a very strong philosophy on transparency and simplicity. And transparency in very simple terms is what you see is what you get. And simplicity is that ability to take complex problems and explain it in very simplistic manner that any person can understand it. And, you know, normally when I talk to young people, I say, don't, you know, take a problem and actually really explain it very simplistic, because when you explain it very simplistic, then you really know your game. But if you look at where we come from, we still hate asterisks with a passion, because it doesn't help that you've got a offer, and then there's an asterisk and say, but this and this apply.
Terms and conditions apply. Yeah.
Terms and conditions apply, or it's only the first 10 people that gets the special, or something like that. So it's very crucial for us, the whole transparency and simplicity. And I think that comes back in the way we explain our products. If I look at our products, every person gets treated exactly the same. Every person gets exactly the same card. Every person gets the same offer. So everything is transparent. Everything is simplistic. So it's the DNA of the company that we've developed over time, and it's an interesting question. And when you lead people and you say to them, explain something for me, very simplistic. There's a lot of people that can't do it. And then that person is not on top of his game. So yeah, the way we report, the way we do things, the way we advertise, the way we communicate, those two words come through, simplicity and transparency. Because we've got a slogan: simplicity plus transparency puts the client in control. So that's what we're focusing on.
Lovely. So maybe before we look into our current reality and into the future, and I see there's questions on the chat, let me just ask you to reflect on what I imagine would have been a challenging time in your life when Viceroy decided to come after you. How did that, not you personally as Gerrie, but Capitec, how did that challenge the leadership and your values within Capitec?
Well, I think, when it happens, you felt your integrity gets questioned, because everything that you've built, everything you've done, you get a question on. But when it happened, it was actually quite an interesting experience, because, when we got at 8 o'clock, we got questions, or 9 o'clock questions from Bloomberg on Viceroy, and then 10 o'clock we got the Viceroy report, and they wanted us to respond immediately, and we said we can't, we need to study the full report. And I still remember I took the report, it was about 40 pages, and I brought in a team of 10 of our top people, and I said, you do page 1 to 2, and you do page 3 to 4, and by 1 o'clock I would like to have answers. And yeah, that afternoon we had a press conference, and we spoke to 700 investors and gave them our feedback. And I think it's a tribute to our information and how we know the business. What was also quite nice is I immediately said to the Exco team that Andre and myself, and Andre is our financial director, I said, we will handle this. You make certain that you run the business. And the team immediately responded, and we carried on. And yeah, we were basically, Andre and myself were full-time on Viceroy probably for a month and a half. So it's again that focus coming through. I think the other lesson that we've learned out of it, if you go in a crisis like that, is to think about what do you want to address. And we sat that morning and said, but who's our audience? Who do we need to work with? And we said it's our clients, it's our staff, it's our investors, and then it's the media. And that's interesting if you take it and you break it down into those 4 components, and then you say, what is your strategy? What is your way of how you're communicating? What is your objective? How it becomes clear on exactly what you need to do. Because otherwise you treat everyone the same. So I think that was what was happening that morning. A lot of people gave us compliments, but on the way we've handled it. But I think that's the only way we know it, Capitec, is to take it head on. We believe in our company and be open and communicate as quickly as possible with the market. I think that's what we've done over that period.
Lovely. So I'm going to ask you later on about your leadership lessons during the COVID times. But before we go there, Gerrie, let's just engage with the panelists. Firstly, let's say to Lorraine Keenan. She says she's in the house. That was just a comment. And then we have somebody, I think it's, let's have a look, Manfred. He's saying, how will Capitec's expansion, customer acquisition strategy change given that given the lockdown and potential future closure of branches nationwide?
Well, there's no change. We're currently operating, we've got 850 branches, and our branches is operating at about 80% capacity. We've got, at any given stage, we've got about 20 to 25 branches that's closed. And that's where a client or one of our staff members were infected, and we have to close the branch, and we close it for a period. But there's not a big change. You know, you need to focus on your fundamentals and what you've always done. So if I look at June, we've acquired 183,000 new clients, and July was also close to 190,000 new clients. So the acquisition still continues, and we're fairly happy with that. I think what COVID has helped us is to take our strategy where it was, let's say, 50% branch, 50% digital. It's now more 80% digital, and digital includes not only the app but also payments, e-commerce, etc., etc. So there's a much more focus on the e-commerce and digital side. So that is what COVID has done for ourselves in a very short space. But your fundamentals of growing your business and client service, etc., stayed the same. What we have done on the credit side is cut back because you understand where your risk is, and then very importantly to help clients. We've given over 11 billion in payment breaks to clients and working with clients, assisting clients. So it's again understanding the client that is quite important. But the business, I think, stayed fairly similar. But yeah, there was intense focus on managing COVID and managing the client experience during COVID.
And from a credit side, do you think there will be a difference in how you think about credit and credit scoring as you become more of a digital bank and less of a face-to-face bank? In other words, in this time when you're saying you're 80% digital and 20% face-to-face, or is that neutral? Is that just a channel issue, not a credit scoring issue?
It's just a channel, and the way we handle branch and the way we handle digital is all automatic, is all scoring. But if you look at COVID, the way it will change it, I believe you're going to see in the future much more people having more than one job. You'll see micro jobbing coming through. So you need to take that into consideration. And then you need to look at things like, people had a payment break, but he was up to date in February. What do you do in his credit score? Do you treat him as normal? Those are the type of decisions that you have to make. And then you need to look at the economy, the industries, etc., to make the right credit decisions. So that is what we're busy with. But there's no, a branch and a digital is a channel. The scoring is automatic and happen with AI models and machine learning, a big portion of it.
So Roy, on the other end, is maybe this is more of a personal banking issue. He wants a Capitec mortgage bond. So he wants to know, when are you going to be entering the home loan market, Gerrie?
I think that's the question everyone asks for ourselves. Actually, currently I'm sitting up and having about 1 or 2 conversations with junior managers and middle managements in the company, and I've spoken to one of them just before this conversation, and that question also comes up. I think that's one of the reasons why we bought Mercantile, because everyone will ask us, when are we going to go into the SME market, and that is why we bought Mercantile, to go into that market. And with Mercantile, you go into secured lending. They've got a secured lending book, and we'll create it as a service and bring that into the Capitec retail platform. And as you know, we're in partnership with SA Home Loans. We've been in partnership with them for the last 3 years. The partnership didn't work that well because of processes, and it wasn't seamless. And we spent a lot of time on that. And in September, October, we're launching a completely new process, so that if a person comes into a Capitec branch and he wants a home loan, it will be a seamless process through to SA Home Loans that will give the mortgage to the client.
Lovely. So Desmond is interested in sustainability and the role of business in the sustainability space. So he wants to know if you're having a different approach towards economic transformation based on our historical burden. I'm not sure what he means, but let's see where we go with that. I believe, and then he says, I believe that every company has a role to play towards strategic, sustainable marketing that needs to address the problem where the organization operates. I'm not sure if you're following what he's asking. If you do, have a go at it, Gerrie.
I will have on transformation and on South Africa. I was, one of the things I've said in public is that I believe what the president must do now is that forget about COVID. So I'm leaving the health situation out, but I'm focusing on growing the economy. Is that that we must all have one objective, and that must be economic growth. So that is 24, 25 ministers, private sector, everyone talks growth. How do we create jobs? How do we grow the economy? And if I look at mercantile and the passion, one of my passions is I believe if you really want to grow South Africa, you need to bring banking into the informal market and provide banking accounts and credit into the informal market to grow that segment. So that will be one of our focus areas going forward to see how we can establish that. Because if you really want South Africa to grow and create jobs, we need to have that entrepreneurial spirit, and we need to have the small and medium-sized businesses to really grow in South Africa. So hopefully via mercantile we can get to that particular answer, but that will be a more 2 to 3 year objective of ourselves.
So our AI has obviously picked up on the sustainability and the sustainable development goals that you are pursuing at Capitec, and I see one of them is no poverty. And Khomotso Serwale on the chat spoke about your views on social grants and rising unemployment. So in addition to potentially playing a role in the informal sector, do you have other strategies, ideas on how to engage this increasing unemployment, inequality, and reliance on social grants?
Well, I believe social grants is a good thing, but if it goes too far, then it's like anything in life, then it becomes a bad thing. Because there's that old saying, don't give somebody a fish, teach him how to catch a fish. So I think where we're starting to get on where social grants is going too far. It's very similar to England, where you're sitting with generations that on social grants and there's no ambition to go and work and to go and do something. So that's just my view on social grants. I think there's a balance, and where we need to focus on is to grow the economy. I think what is important is we need to get the red tape out of the systems. There's unfortunately a lot of uncertainty, a lot of red tape, a lot of regulations that doesn't make sense. And we need to provide credit and banking facilities at much lower cost to those particular sector. And then the other one that for me is a big passion is education. I think we are, and Maurice, you probably can help me out here, but we are spending in South Africa, I think we're the 5th or 6th highest spend in the world on education. But if you look at our results, it's not very good.
The outcomes are terrible, yeah? Yeah,
they're terrible. And it's interesting, we've started in Capitec by providing bursaries and to scholars, and then we realized, but this is not going to work. And we started about 3 years ago with a program with UCT where we provide leadership courses to the headmasters to give him managerial skills to actually manage the school better and to lead his teachers better, and then to look at the infrastructure and look at the schools, how you can get the infrastructure better. It's actually amazing. I was privileged to hand over the certificates the other day, and the school in the Eastern Cape in Queenstown had about a 35-36% pass rate, and 3 years later, that principal got them up to 90%. So it's again, I think we've got enough resources. We're spending the resources on the wrong in the wrong areas. And I think education is a very good example of that, where you need to give your headmaster managerial skills, and you need to make certain that your teachers have got the right skills. Because if we want to be successful in South Africa, we need to increase the skill level tremendously to be successful.
Lovely. So, and then we've got a guy called Jeroboam Zondi. He's interested in understanding what is Capitec doing differently other than relative to other financial service providers regarding its growth, where others are scaling down during this pandemic, Gerrie?
Yeah, I think, people ask us, what is Capitec doing different? And I always say, if you're in a service industry, it's not one thing. It's not only price, it's not only product. So the way we say to ourselves, the way we position ourselves, we're saying it is our, or how do we differentiate? It's our positioning. So it's the way our branches operate, the openness, the way our app is operating, the fact that we're trading on Sundays, the way that we see ourselves as a retail, so our banking hours is from 8 o'clock in the morning. Our branch that closes the latest is 10 o'clock at night. So we go where the needs of the client is. Our product offering is completely different. There's no differentiation on income. So it's not that you get a blue card or a pink card or a purple card depending on your income. We treat everyone exactly the same. Our pricing is very simplistic and transparent. And then on service, we break it down on side-by-side consulting. For people that hasn't been to our branches, you sit with the consultant and both look at the screen. So it's not one thing, it's a combination in the service industry of 5 or 6 things that you need to do right to create that unique client experience. Because ultimately, your best advertising is word of mouth. So if that client walks away and he understands your product and he tells his friend, that's when you create magic.
Look, I mean, writing over 150, 180 odd new clients under these times a month is insane, Gerrie. So I can understand the question about what are you doing differently. So thank you for that comprehensive response. And then there's another guy called John Mkhatu who says, are you insane? How could you go into unsecured vehicle finance in April? What were you thinking?
Well, you need to be different, and you need to believe in what you're doing. He's referring to the access facility, and for us, if you look at credit, a person needs to go into a branch, and you need to do a full credit assessment, and then it's valid for 12 months or 18 months, you pay it back, and then you need to go in. So with COVID, we've already developed the product, and are we going to launch, yes or no? And we said, given COVID, let's launch, because the whole purpose of the access facility is that you get a facility, you can use the facility when and how you want, and as long as you're repaying it, you never have to come into a branch, or you never have to get for approval again. So it's actually a perfect product in the COVID situations. But I think
lovely. So there is logic in the madness, Gerrie. There is logic in the madness. So Neo Mulele, and I'm going to skip away from. There's a lot of people engaging with you. I'll skip away a little bit from this chat into the other one in a second. He's really interested in new entrants. So we've got, and I'm now borrowing from Neo's question. We've got these digital banks coming online, Discovery, Time Bank, and so forth. And then Telkom indicating they're entering the financial services space. They want to compete with you in the funeral space with MMI's guard risk. And then we know, for example, Vodacom is now entering the fintech space with Ant Financial Services with Alipay. So what do you think all of these new entrants are going to do to the banking segments in which you operate?
Well, the way we believe you need to provide banking, especially in South Africa, is you need to have 3 components. You need to have a branch environment where people can connect, and especially difficult products you can sell and inform people and that they really understand it. Then you need to have a strong digital platform. It's quite interesting is Of our 14.5 million clients, 7 million is transacting on digital. But we still got 6 million clients coming into our branches every single month, which shows you that need still to be in contact. And then thirdly, you need to have the ability to engage with your client. So you need to understand your client. You need to be able to inform your client. You need to send him SMSs. You need to engage and say to him, do this better, or are you aware of this? So that whole communication with the client is critical, and that's what we will focus on. You know, a lot of people ask me about the digital banks. Yes, I believe digital is a good thing, but remember, ourselves, all the other banks, we're spending a tremendous amount of money on digital and the digital offer and everything that goes with that. So I think it's part of the journey. I think ultimately it's the one that understands the client the best and make things simplistic and transparent so the client feels in control and he understands what happens in his financial life. That is going to be the winner.
Lovely. And there's a whole range of people that are interested in your international ambitions. When are you going to expand? What is the role of the rest of our continent in that expansion plan? Which other markets are of interest to Capitec? So I wonder if you are comfortable to share some of your thinking around Capitec's ideas around internationalization.
Yeah, I remember we bought a small online lending business in Poland that's operating in 6 or 7 countries. So to understand the international market, it wasn't a very expensive investment. It was about 300 million. But the whole purpose is to learn. We always said you rather go small and learn than to go big and fail. And I think there's enough of that learnings in South Africa. But the focus now is we've got Mercantile, and the focus is on growing Mercantile and using that opportunity. We will build Mercantile on a completely digital platform. And over time, your retail will also be on a digital platform. And I think then you'll have a very strong base to go into international. But I think, you know, that word focus is important. We've got Mercantile, we've got the whole informal market, we've got the whole SME market. So let's focus on that, make certain that we understand it and that we can say we're successful in South Africa. Because if you're successful in the informal market in South Africa, you can for sure be successful in Africa. But I think it's a giant step to go and try and do South Africa plus 10 or 15 Africa countries. And then always people say to us, Africa, but what about Brazil? What about India? What about, there's so many other countries that you also can go in. But currently our focus is let's really master what we've got. So that focus will be for the next 2 to 3 years there. And then, yeah, time will tell where we go.
Lovely. I'll give you the details of a guy called Emmanuel Maposa later, Gerrie, because he wants to know if you've got a graduate development program. He's a recent graduate. How does he apply? Don't answer that. We'll connect him with you guys.
Well, we've got it. You can just be in touch with our HR department. Go on our website. But we've
Absolutely.
got a good program that
Thank you.
Run.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Good show. I think you'll go very far. Ask and you shall receive. There's also a range of questions that are like focusing on COVID. So I wonder first if you could talk about during this COVID time, what has been Capitec's approach, leadership internally, and then Capitec's approach, leadership within the industry, how you've interacted within your industry beyond your own borders.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable journey, COVID, because, you know, I remember in February, and I said it a couple of times, I still was fighting with our call center people and said, we should have flexibility in our call centers, and we should be able to work from home, and we should be able to have flexi staff. And they all said, "You mad? And it's not possible." And then COVID happened. In 10 days into COVID, we had our whole call center working from home. And you know, we also got and I'm just sharing you examples. We had we've got a firm foundation. So every single person that gets employed in the bank, and we employ about 200 to 300 people per month, gets flown down to Stellenbosch and spend 10 days here where we talk culture and the way we work and our values, etc., etc. But we had to do this suddenly remotely, and within 3 to 4 weeks, we had a graduate program where we did it remotely. I think the point that I want to get to is we as people are normally too scared to make that decisive decision, and a crisis like this actually showed us how easy it is to actually make that decision. I think one needs to think out of the box, and you need to drive yourself much more and challenge yourself much more to get to those answers. I think then if you look at COVID, our management style, I think, you know, the word with our own staff and our clients was communicate, communicate, communicate. And then secondly, make a decision. And if it turns out to be a bad decision, correct it as quickly as possible. But what people don't like is when you take 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks to make a decision. You know, make a decision, be 80% right and go with it, and then decide if it's right or not, tweak and carry on. So for us, it was important. We had in COVID, our exco was getting together every single morning for half an hour to an hour. We had to make quick decisions, look at the safety of our people, look at our clients, and you make those decisions and then carry them out. So I think that is important, that whole communication and then execution of decisions that you've taken is critical in COVID.
And I know that, for example, the competition authorities has relaxed some of its regulations, competition regulations for certain industries, and banking is one of those, which allows banks to collaborate to ensure financial soundness and financial stability. How has that process gone along, Gerrie?
It's gone. I think it was amazing how BASA, the Banking Association of South Africa, how we operated, especially in those first 2 months, and then how the Reserve Bank was involved, Treasury was involved, government was involved. So it was an incredible period. We had sometimes daily meetings, and I think the whole competition commission, because always we're very scared that if we get together in a room that there could be allegations, that just helped us to make certain decisions. I remember when the request came through from the Minister of Finance that SASSA ATM fees must be dropped to 0. That decision was made within a day. Normally, that would have taken 2 or 3 months. So I think, you know, it comes to me again, I think it was a very good example of how private sector and government can work together and make decisions very quickly, because things that normally took months, 5, 6 months, we did it in 2, 3 days. And unfortunately, in the last couple of months, we're getting back to that particular period. Is that I think that trust gap is opening up between the different players, and I'm talking general now, I'm not talking BASA, and that to me is worrying. But it shows you, if you put your mind to it, how you can make decisions very quickly.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to ask you one more question in this space, and then there's a whole host of questions of a tech base. So the question is on the chat, and the person is concerned with your views on, I think it's GIFT. What do you think about the future of the country when is the economy going to bounce back to pre-COVID, and what sectors do you think will be leading the growth? That's GIFT Matengambiri.
Well, I think if you look at what is happening, the whole digital space, the whole online space, I think it's in a very nice space. I look at online shopping this morning. I said sales has gone up from 1% to 5-6%. In China, that's 25%. In America, it's 15%. So we still got a long way to go. So I think the digital space is a big opportunity. I think there's also a big opportunity to be able to sell your skills worldwide. Because what Teams and Zoom teach us that you can sit at home and you can work anywhere. And we've got the exchange rate that is very positive for us. So we need to get our mindset that we get our people to be able to not only look at jobs in South Africa, but also to look at jobs internationally. But you don't need to now move to America or London. You can sit in your home and do certain jobs. So there's a lot of opportunities. Coming back to the economy, I'm worried about the economy. I'm worried about, I think in general, there's too much talk in government and there's no execution. There's too many plans, but nothing is executed. You know, there's that saying that don't try and formulate a plan 100% and then there's no execution. Rather, get a plan 80% right, but execute very hard. And we're lacking on the execution side. And we need to make certain that government and private sector, there's trust and they're working together. So we need to get that trust going. And I think that's a long journey. And that comes back to leadership. It comes back to your actions, the way you operate, what you do that creates trust. And you know how long it takes to build trust and how quickly is it to lose trust.
Absolutely. Talking about leadership, let's now pivot to leadership questions around technology. There's a whole host of interest about what are you doing with blockchain? Is there space for blockchain in Capitec Bank? And then the other questions relate to things like chatbots, robo-advisors, AI, machine learning, natural language processing. Is there still a role for the branch-based model in this context? We'll start there, we'll stop, then I'll come back again with one more tech question.
I think blockchain is a very interesting, a very powerful tool, but it's still got a long way to do to make it commercially. If you look at the amount of energy it uses, the amount of computing power it uses, etc., etc. But there's for sure areas that you can use it, and it's for sure areas that over time, as computer power increases and processing speed increases, it will definitely be a way of the future. And we're not investing currently in it, but we definitely are involved in it, and we're definitely observing and following the trends. I think if you look at machine learning, AI, chatbots, etc., that's where we're spending a lot of our time, because it just gives you a very powerful way to engage with your client. I get a lot of the questions of what is it going to do to your branch? For me, the answer is two ways. A human being is a person that can connect. A computer can't connect with another person. A computer is a computer. So that ability to connect and communicate, that's what a human being does very well. The second one is the ability to formulate strategy and develop strategy. A computer can't. A computer does what a human tells him to do. And the third thing is the input that a computer needs comes from a human being. So those three things you'll never take away from a human being. The ability to compute and analyze and do things quicker, that is what a machine can do. And it's how do you actually bring these two together that actually creates power. And I use an example. We in the branches at cashiers, and we still got, but they're getting moved out very quickly. But a cashier actually received money from a depositor, count the money, and then dropped it in a drop safe. There was no real skill apart from a little bit of counting. Now, currently, the client that goes to a DNR, and a DNR is an ATM that can either deposit or you can withdraw money. So the client now puts it into the machine counts, and it gets dropped. But now we can use that same cashier to actually connect with the client and explain the product better, making certain that they understand the full Capitec offer. And that's what we concentrate in our branches. That's for me the important. So one was you'll never have only machines. You need to have both. And it's
So
how
maybe
do you optimize those?
we can call them human machines. Human machines.
Yeah.
We need human machines working in our space. So Katlego is interested in that space to say clearly innovation has been a key driver for Capitec, and given all these 4IR technologies, do you still believe that you will still be in the forefront of innovation in 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, you have to be. So for me, it's not a question. It's just that you have to do it. So you really need to understand what is happening worldwide and what capabilities are there in the world. And it's interesting how things has evolved. You know, if you look at the Apple phone, that was wow. What they're currently doing is they're just doing enhancements. So where the focus is now is that end-to-end client experience and looking at that whole process to say, how do you enhance it to create that unique innovation? So I just want to bring that point across. People think of innovation as this wow idea, but it's actually how do you create experiences and end-to-end experiences that also creates wows. And that's where we're focusing quite a lot on.
Yeah, so maybe allow me just to like show off a little bit, you know. There's a lady called Anita McGrath. She's a professor in the US, and she talks about discovery-driven innovation. And we know that the late Clayton Christensen speaks about disruption-driven innovation. And because you're like one of us, you like learning, you're an MBA graduate, I thought I'd give you a quick refresher. And this notion of discovery-driven innovation is really about that point that you're talking about, that it's not always about the new, but it's about refreshing the old and representing them in a wow that actually creates a new experience for you and your customer. So absolutely. And
but it's also interesting, you know, people say Capitec is a disruptor. Oh, I hate that. I say Capitec is not a disruptor. Capitec understands the client needs and is delivering on the client's needs. That's actually what, if you look at a disruptor, it's just somebody that's delivering quicker on a client needs.
Yeah. So I think this is Emmanuel again, but he's now put himself under anonymous. He says, I would like to know if Capitec have a strategy to upskill youth that are currently not in the technology data analytics field into those areas, seeing that that is where the skill shortage is.
We develop our people. We've got a very strong internal development program. And I think one of the beautiful stories we've got is a person called Dumasani. Dumasani started with me in the bank, but he was a runner, then a consultant, then a branch manager, then a regional manager. And he's moved up, and on the age of 38, 39, he is now an exco, and he's got an MBA, and he did that by developing. But I think what is important is development is not only the responsibility of the company, but it's the responsibility of the individual to grow and to learn and to develop. So yeah, development for me is key, not only on AI, but right across.
Gerrie, in terms of we're about to conclude, clearly the banking sector is going through change, as in fact many sectors are going to be changed by this COVID experience. When you take a through the cycle view, what do you think the future of banking is going to look like?
Well, I think the one that is going to change completely is payments. And are really, that is where we're going to put a lot of emphasis, but I think everyone is going to, because if you look at why do you want to use a card? Why do you want to enter a PIN? Why do you want to hold a point of sale machine? If you can take a QR code and you can just take your phone and you use MasterPass, or you tap and go. The ability to pay with your phone. So the whole payments environment, I think, is going to change tremendously, and it's going to give us a lot of opportunities. The whole e-commerce environment is going to give you a lot of opportunities. I think then the whole machine learning, AI, understanding your client much better, and to optimize the client experience is going to give you plenty of opportunities. And then, yeah, the whole digital ability, that you can bank anywhere, anytime, I think is going to play an important role. So I think there's still, it's definitely going to change, but there's tremendous opportunities in the banking sector, because I think you can take that, what I'm describing, to a much bigger range of products that you can bring into the banking sector.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you about two different groups of players. So on the one hand, you have fintech. So the same question, friend or foe? And on the other, you've got big tech, friend or foe?
Well, you know, for us is, if I look at fintech, a lot of people ask me about fintech, and what we've seen is very good ideas, very clever ideas, but the moment they have to handle volumes, and the moment they have to handle security, then they've got a problem. And just to give a bit of an experience, we can handle now close to 11 million transactions per second. So this gives you a feel for, if I'm talking volumes. And so I believe what you need to look at is partnerships, and that you work together, where fintech or even a big tech, Microsoft, we use Microsoft very strongly because they're bringing out very unique products. The whole cloud environment is opening up quite a lot of opportunities. So for me is how do you partner? And I think how do you build it onto platforms where you've got the ability to plug in, plug out, because the world is changing, and you need to be able to change with the world.
Lovely. So again, in terms of from a forward-looking space, and we're going to conclude again around leadership lessons, but first, let's talk about this thing called talent. Do you still feel that banking as a sector is attracting the best talent, or are we seeing other industries taking talent away from the industry as a whole? Where are we in terms of attracting talent in the banking sector?
It's interesting if you look at the whole data science, artificial intelligence, etc. There, I think the banking sector is struggling, because it's interesting. What is attractive to those people is that small company, startup, my own boss, my own environment. And I think it's the one thing that COVID has actually teach bigger companies is, like ourselves, to be much more flexible, adaptable, and have the ability to attract that talent. But I think, no, I think overall, apart from those particular areas, I think on the IT space, I think the problem is we're sitting in South Africa is talent overall. Our number of engineers, our business science people, often I can go through our number of CIOs, etc. We need much more qualified people to help delivering on client needs and use the opportunities of South Africa. And that's why I'm passionate about the whole education system.
Lovely. And then coming back to some leadership questions, if I'm a young leader and I'm aspiring to be a CEO one day, and what are some of the leadership lessons that I can take away from your life experience, particularly at Capitec?
Yeah, I think it's wrong to aspire to become a CEO, and I'll explain now. I think for me, what I always say to people, you need to understand what your passion is, what drives you, what makes you stand up in the morning to do something great, that let you go that extra mile that you really would like. Because if you do your passion, then you will be good. So don't try and say, I'm sitting here now. Go and find out what is your passion and really live it. If your passion is to play guitar, and you can do it, excellent, go for it. And then when you go into leadership, if I look at leadership overall, I think people complicate it too much. There's too many theories. For me, in very simplistic terms, is the why. If you as a leader can explain why you need to do it, and you can inspire a person that he really understands that, then he will deliver on it. And we don't spend enough time on that why. We tend to do it very quickly. Myself, you get a youngster in that will pop into my office and I'll ask him to do something. And as he walked out, I know I've made a mistake because I didn't spend quality time with that person to really make certain that he understands what is expected of him. So I think it's that passion. And then the other very important one is on leadership is the why. Go out and develop people, but develop them, let them understand the why.
And then if you were to reflect on leadership in business in general, do you see evidence of business leadership shifting as a consequence of this COVID? Or is it just something that we're just going to take on the chin, and when we're back to normal, it's back to our old tricks?
No, I think there's going to be a leadership change. I think people is going to be much more focused on values, environmental areas. And I think what is going to drive that is also the whole need of the client. Because if you look at what has happened with COVID, is that suddenly, I'm going to call it the plastic world of eating out and buying and shopping, etc., etc. What is people now doing? Again, at home, they spend quality time with their own family. They're sitting around a coffee table and talk about life and where life is taking you. So it's definitely going to change the way people operate. I was mountain biking Saturday morning here in Stellenbosch, and it was amazing at Jonkershoek to see the amount of people that is actually out in nature. And I was wondering what, and I was saying to myself, because they're not shopping, they're not doing school activities or whatever. So they're enjoying, I think, a different way of life. And I think that will definitely make a change on the needs of the client. And as a leader, you need to understand that. And you as a leader needs to make certain that you're much more involved in the community and much more involved in making certain your company understands those particular areas to be successful.
Gerrie, you've been such an inspiration. I want to take this opportunity to thank you. I could be throwing a lot more questions at you. I know that Desmond, for example, is really keen on throwing some fancy terms like the one Disco data line migrator. I have no clue what that is. And he's using other big words like cloud. That's the stuff that's up there, I think. But I think he means something else, and hyperscale environments. But I think you've done a great job talking about how Capitec positions itself firstly as a values-based business, as a business that focuses on being honest, being simple, and being transparent, and putting the customer at the center and making sure that its people understand the why so that they are doing the what as best as they can. Thank you very much for spending your afternoon with us. And we look forward to see you in the real world, not in the mountains, but in the bank branch. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
No, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Lovely.